Okay. All right. So once again, welcome to our. All right. Thank you. Yeah. So once again, welcome to our day 3 of our mentorship program as Geospatial developers. Yeah. And for before I start, I would like to put it across, but for the purpose of our new members who are lagging behind, kindly visit the playlist link I shared in the group. You can go through the conversation. You have the link there. Then you can go through the day 1 and the day 2 of the day 1, day 2, and our introductory meetup section for you to catch up with whatever we've learned so far. Yeah, so the YouTube page name is Geospatial Developers. You can just go there and watch all the sessions that we've had previously. Okay, so to start today's session, I'll quickly give a recap of what we learned yesterday. So, sorry, 2 days ago. That's on Wednesday. Yeah. So on Wednesday, we learned how to import our geospatial database. Geospatial data set, our vector data, data sets into our Postgres database. And we learned 2 approaches, using the Postgres bundle and also using the QGIS DB manager. So basically, that's what we learned. We learned on Wednesday, and also we tried to visualize the data sets that we imported in the DB. Yeah. So today we will run some queries, some 1 or 2 queries on the data that we imported. Then we will start our introduction to Geoserver. So gradually we are approaching the web development. So right after our data sets, getting our data ready in our Geoserver, then the following week we'll start with the introduction to HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Then we'll move to working with the map libraries. That's our leaflets. And we'll do a little bit of Bootstrap, yeah, to help organize our layout. Okay, so yesterday we created a database. I named my database WebGIS. I know you also named yours, like the name you use, you can go into that database. So you can see mine opened here. I will scroll down into the schemas, then I'll go to tables. So I imported 6 of our sheet files into our DB. So as we can see, we have health facilities, airports, POIs, railways, region, and rivers. Okay, so someone may ask, so how do I get access to this data? You can visualize it by using an icon, this icon here, to view data. So you highlight on the table that you are interested, and you hit on the view data. It will bring everything out. Okay, in another way, you can also write a query using the SQL command or the SQL language to get your data out of the DB. So I want all of you to, whilst I wait for my data to load, I want all of you to, all of us to click on this icon. I hope you can all see my screen where the mouse is hovering. Let's click on it to activate our query layer, our query panel. We are going to write a simple SQL command to get our data from the database. Okay. My machine is still loading the regions, so I'm allowing it to load the regions before I click on our panel. So when you click on this icon, it should open a similar interface. Okay, let's wait for it. Okay, so it's going to open a similar interface like what you are seeing here. So you see your query editor here. Then you have your query history. So this will show all the queries that you've run before. You can select that query and rerun it again. Okay, so we want to query out, and let me also show you something here. Each panel or each data view on the page it creates a tab here. So you can see first I clicked on the region, it has created a tab, and now I'm in a query. So it has a tab here. So you can switch in between the tabs. So that's the region. You can see that. And that's our WebGIS, the query editor. Okay. All right. Please pardon me, my machine is a bit slow today. Okay, so you can use this whilst I wait for my query editor's panel to load. You can play around with the data, the view data. I know by now those of us who joined our last section are used to this, but for the sake of those of us who are joining us for the first time, you can play all around our view data sets. Then we can move on. Okay, so my query editor has loaded. So we are just going to write a simple query. And I will share a link with you to go through the SQL language and go through how you can use some basic spatial queries also to get data out of this database. I'm just showing you this so that you can, if let's say when you start your development and you want to cross-check or confirm something, at times when you are debugging an error, you debug at the front end, and you can also come to the back end to debug. So let's say a figure is showing on a dashboard or on the front end, which is not the expected value that you are looking out for. You can do that by writing a SQL language on your database to see if when you calculate that value, you get the same as what is showing at the front end. If you are getting that right at the back end and the front end is wrong, then you have to check that relation. What is cost, like which query did you use in getting that? I hope I'm making some points. All right, so let's put together a simple script to get a data from our POI. So we'll say select each time you want to get a data from the tables, you use the select command. So you are saying select all, and all, the star represents all. So you are selecting all from our POI. That's our table. POIS. Yeah, so that's our table. When you are done with that, tap on the execute, or you can also use Control R to run that command. So after running, you should see something similar to what you are seeing on my screen. Let me enlarge it a little bit. Okay, so this is just a simple select statement in the SQL language. Okay, I'll also would like to run another command. So if you want to comment a certain line on your query editor, you use two hyphens in front of the that row, or you can simply use Control / to comment a certain row. So I'll come to the next line, then I will run a simple count statement and say select, I'll say count. We want to check the number of POIs we have in our database. So select count. We are counting all from POI. Okay. So this, the expected output is supposed to be a number, like a figure, a whole number. So when you run, I'm getting 8,135. So which means that we have 8,135 rows in the POI's table. You can do the same for other column. Okay, so assuming I want to use some scenarios at the offices or your campuses to make it more practical. You have this database or this table, the POIs on your database. You've saved all your shape files in your DB. Now, usually the shape file, when you look at the attributes, you don't, depending on how the data was prepared, maybe you can't see the X and Y coordinates in there, or the latitude and longitude are not included. And a colleague of yours is also needs just the name of the place and the X and Y, or the latitude and the longitude records, or the data from the database. So we are going to write a simple command to get that in pgadmin. So I'll comment this row, then move to the next row. So this time around, we will still use our select statement because we are selecting. We will say select, then st_x. So this is a function that will help you get the x of the geometry column. So let me open the POI again so that we can all see. Okay, so you can see we have a geometry column here. So this is where the geometry of this feature is saved. So we need, you can see over here is it has been encoded. So we need the X and the Y from this field. So to do that, let me come back to our query editor. So to do that, we say select st underscore x into brackets our geometry. Then I'm saying comma. Then I'll say st underscore y into brackets geom. Then I'll say comma. I need the name. So that I'm selecting the x, the y, and the name column from the database. So I'll say from our table POIS. So let's run the script and see the outcome. I hope it brings something. Okay. Yeah, so you can see in our results data output panel that it has given us the x and the y coordinates of each POI feature in the table. But when you go to the table, let's come to the POI table. You can see we don't have any x and y, the latitude and longitude, the latitude and the longitude coordinates in here. Right, we generated the x and y from the geometry field. Okay, so these are some basic commands, SQL commands you can write in there. There are a number of them. We have the st underscore contain, we have st underscore crosses, st underscore disjoints, st underscore equals, st underscore intersects, st underscore overlap, st underscore redeem. So these are like some functions that you can call in getting your data sets to write your spatial queries in your Postgres database. Because that's not the main focus for our objective, I'm just touching base on it, and I'll send a link to you to read more on these languages, our spatial queries, so that you can also master that. All right. So all the queries that you run in the query editor, you can check your query history. So let's say some days ago you ran a certain query and you need that script. You can come to the query history and check all the queries that you've made over the weeks, months, or years. So far as you've not cleared your history, you can get that here, and you can easily click on it and get the statement here and rerun it. Okay, so this was just a top up of what we learned yesterday. We learned on Wednesday. So today our main agenda is to get introduced to our Geoserver. That's going to play a key role in our GeoPortal or WebGIS development. So I put together some few slides to introduce it, and we can go into some practicals. Okay. Please hope you can see my screen. I'll share this slide after this session. I'll put it on GitHub and also put it on the page so that we can go through at our leisure time. So what's Geoserver? Geoserver is an open source web mapping server, and it's written in Java platform. That does not mean that you are going to run a Java application. You are going to write Java codes here. No, the whole system was built with on a Java platform, and It has some subsets of web service model, especially designed to share and publish geographically information over the internet. So what this point is trying to mean is, assuming you have your spatial data and you would like to publish it online. Yeah, so Geoserver helps you in doing that. And that's our main objective for this whole mentorship program, trying to put together a geoportal WebGIS application. Yeah. And so in Geoserver, it utilizes WFS, WMS, WCS, and for the purpose of this program, we are going to touch base on two of them, WMS and WCS. Sorry, WMS and WFX. That's the web mapping services and the web feature services. These are the two aspects that we are going to tackle. I'll share a link and you can go into it and read more on Geoservice. But I'll try as much as possible to touch base on all the basics that you need to know before you move on. Okay. And Geoserver is part of the backend and provides and supplies a WebGIS tool with geodata. So with Geoserver, as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, that the data that you have at your backend, the database, is what you are going to publish in Geoserver. So it forms part of the backend of your WebGIS or your geoportal application. So that's where you are going to publish all your spatial. So the data that we've saved in the database, we are going to publish all of them on the Geoserver, and the Geoserver will serve the front end. That's our map library with our with WMS and WFX to show the layers on the map. Okay, let's move to the next slide. So this is an overview of the Geoserver. So you can see here, Geoserver accepts vector files. So if you have a shape file, there's no need for you to upload it into a database and publish it on Geoserver. You can get the shape file on the server on your local PC and publish directly. But the disadvantage is that if someone goes to the directory in which the shapefile is and mistakenly move the shapefile to another location, the layer that you publish in Geoserver will be corrupted because the shapefile has been the directory to the that shapefile has been changed. That's the only disadvantage with the shapefile. But I always advise my students to get your data, your shapefiles into your database. Anytime you need it, you can call it, and nobody tampers with it. Okay, and you also have a database in here. So we have our Postgres database there with our vector data sitting on it. If you have an Oracle, you have MySQL, SQL Server, you can also publish your data on Geoserver. And there are other servers that you can also publish the data on. If you have a WFS, that's a web feature services, or the XDE on Geoserver. And you can see we have a raster data here. To talk of raster, I shared a TIFF file on the page this afternoon. I hope we were able to download that because we'll be using that for our illustration either today or tomorrow, depending on how far we go with today's section. So on the left side are the inputs. So some data, these are some data sources we can pass or input in Geoserver, and on the right side are the outputs. So when you publish the left side on Geoserver, these are the some outputs you can get out of Geoserver. We have the web feature services, that's the WFX. So the Geoserver can publish your data out in a form of a shape file, GML2, GML3, GeoJSON, CSV, or XLS. And the same way we have WMS, these are star maps like the PNG. And for the purpose of this program, we are going to touch base on the first two. The web coverage services, the documents I'll be sharing will speak a lot on it, and you can go through that. And Geoserver also serves the data out in the form of a KML. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So I've been mentioning WMS a lot. So what's WMS? So WMS is just a map that has been converted into an image, right? So you can see, let's say you have the data for the whole world, or the whole, let's say the whole Ghana, and you want to build a system and load all these data sets on a map. You can imagine how heavy the data will be on the map, and it will slow down your system. So personally, I usually convert all huge data sets to WMS, and I deal with it. So you have, like, let's say you have a vector data covering the whole world. You want to visualize that on the map, and let's say the data is around 1.5 gig or 2.6 gig, and you have to load that on the leaflet or your open layers map library. It's going to slow down the system, but when you convert it in a form of a PNG or a JPEG under WMS, it will be lighter and it loads faster than the GeoJSON. And WMS is a standard protocol which was developed by OGC, and it's available for both raster and vector data sets. So these two, will touch base on these two, how we can publish our vector data sets and our raster data sets into WMS. Okay, and the WFX usually retains the geometry and the attributes for the user to utilize in their geospatial analysis. So with the WFX, some people say, okay, they usually say it's a form of a GeoJSON API. So it converts the data into GeoJSON and shows it shows the data, it serves the data out as in the form of a GeoJSON. Yeah, and I hope you all know. I don't know if you've all seen how a GeoJSON is. If you've not, we'll experiment now. When we start the practicals, we'll be converting some of the shape files to GeoJSON, and we'll be like plotting the GeoJSON maps. The GeoJSON data sets on our leaflet map. So don't worry, just keep it, note it somewhere. When we get there, I'll reiterate that. Then you get it. So let's move to the next slide. That's how the Geoserver hierarchy is. So when you enter the Geoserver interface, let me see if I can launch my Geoserver. Okay. Okay, so when you enter your Geoserver, you can see on your left, we have layer preview, we have work space, we have storage, we have stores, we have layers, we have layer groups, and we have styles. Yeah. So this is what I'm talking about. Let's go back to the slide. So Geoserver usually saves or organizes the data in a layman's view. I'll say in a form of a folders. Let me say like a folders. So we have a workspace. So you can create a workspace. Let's say you are working for two companies, USA and let's say UK, and you don't want to mix the two data sets, the data sets for these two companies. So you create a workspace for UK, you create a workspace for USA, and all the data sets for USA will be assigned to the USA workspace. All the data for UK will also be assigned to that workspace. So in a way, you have a lot of data in there, but they belong to different workspaces. So when you're creating a store, the store asks in the creation of the store, you are being asked to select a workspace. So you have to assign the store to a workspace. Sorry, a workspace. Yeah. So you move from the store, from the workspace, then you come to store. So the store gets the data from the source and brings it in. Then out of the store, you'll be able to get your layers. Then you can also group the layers using the layer groups. Then after you've published your layer or your layer groups, you can create a style and apply the style to these layers. And we are going to touch each of these items on the list. Yeah, we'll have a more practical sections on all these items here. So in my earlier submissions, I was trying to explain why we will use Geoserver. I think I made a first point in the beginning. So when you're loading a big file, let's say 2 gig, 5 gig, GeoJSON, or a shape file on a map, the fastest way to load is on the map is to publish the data on Geoserver and serve it out as a WMS. Or yeah. And why use Geoserver? So when I'm creating a WebGIS application, I will need my layers to be converted so that I can publish it over internet. And the Geoserver also meets the OGC's standard services. And managing styles. So let's say you have about 20 layers or 20 layers published in your Geoserver, and you have style for each of the items. It's easy to manage all these styles. In Geoserver organizes the styles. When you go to the style section, you have all the styles, and I will teach you how to get your styles from QGIS to the Geoserver and apply them to the layers. Some people will choose to write the style in XML. I used to do that, but I found an easier way to do that, and I've stopped doing coding in the XML. So I'll show you an easier way to go around all these. Yeah. Okay. So with the workspace, I think I've touched base on the workspace, but let me quickly go through the stuff. So the workspace is the name for the container used in grouping similar data sets, as I made mention earlier. And it consists of the namespace URI, in there. So you have to state the name of the workspace, and the namespace URI is optional. You can choose to leave it blank, but if you have it in mind, you can just get it in there. And the namespace should not, please let's note this point, that the namespace should not contain any space. I remember I was teaching someone some years ago, and the colleague of mine kept sending me message, how did you create the workspace? I'm getting an error. It seems my Geoserver is not working well. Some plugins isn't installed. But at the long run, when I looked at the thing, I realized that he omitted this thing. He introduced space in there. So when he was saving, he had issues. It kept giving, and he also didn't read the error code to notice that what he's trying to input in there wasn't accepted. So let's note that here. So personally, in order to avoid most of these errors, when you check most of my codes or most of the setup I do, I avoid spaces. Wherever there is space, I try to use underscore. So I avoid some of these things. Okay, let's move to data store. So the data store refers to the data source, as I made mention earlier. So when you have your database, your PostGIS database, you have your shapefile, you have your raster file, all these data sources are being brought in through the data store. So you link your shapefile, your directory to the shapefile at the data store. You connect your database to the data store. You connect your GeoTIFF file location or the URL to the GeoTIFF file at the data store, so that when you get to the layer, you can publish those features in there. And what's the layers that I've been mentioning it since I started. So layers are a representation of the geodata sets you publish, being it your vector or your raster data sets. And each layer, and one thing I would also like to iterate here, when you publish a shapefile, when you publish the layer, automatically Geoserver renders it in WMS or the raw data, that's the WFS or WCS, that's the web coverage services. So you don't need to go there to convert anything to it. Automatically does this for you. So once you publish, these things are being done for you. Yours is to get the URI or the URL or the endpoints to this and load it in your QGIS web application, wherever you want to use it. Yeah. And each layer in Geoserver has its exact workspace and stores. So the hierarchy I was showing, you create the workspace, you create your store, you link your store to your workspace, then you publish your layer from the data source. Then if you want to group any layer, you can. If you want to apply a style to the layer, you can also do that at that point. Okay, so the point I made earlier is saying the Geoserver automatically creates a WMS and a WFS for each layer, and a separate creation is not possible. So you can't just create, you go in there, as for me, I don't want to create any WFS, I only want WMS. Automatically it creates these two for you. So whichever that you want to use, you can use that. Okay, and you can only define in the workspace if all layers in the current workspace can be viewed as WMS and WFS. Only as WMS or only as WFS. So let's say you have a raster data set. You can group your raster data sets together with your vector. the vector data sets can be Geoserver can serve it out as a WMS or a WFX, but the raster, you can't convert the raster to a WFX. It can only convert it to a WMX. So I think I brought this point for it to draw your attention when you are getting certain errors. So when it comes to the layer groups, the layer groups are a collection of layers. So let's say you've published, let me use this experience I had some time ago. So I was dealing with this drone images, and the data set, the data was very huge. I published it, and then the client needed the data to load faster, even with the WMX. When you zoom in, the moment you load it on the map, you should be able to zoom in to see the trees. So upon research from the clients and my side, so the client was like, okay, we've experimented something before with the Geoserver before. We divided the data into tiles, we loaded them onto the Geoserver, and we merged all the tile layers to form a group. And when we did that, it's loaded. When you load that data set on the map, it loads faster than you loading all like that huge data set on the map. And what we did was, so they created those tiles, I think 5,000 by 5,000, and I wrote a program to programmatically load all the tiles, about let's say 100 tiles, load all of them on Geoserver. Then we grouped the layer, and when we tried that, it was way faster than the first. So at that point, I learned something there. So the next time, that's one thing about programming. At each point in it, you should try as much as possible to find the good side of it. You'll get an error, and I get a lot of these messages from the group. Somebody will get an error, try to solve it, the person is unable to solve it. The moment you give up, that is it. You should never give up. Try as much as possible to make sure that you find a solution to an error before you continue. The moment you give up, you didn't learn anything there. So at times I can get an error, sit behind the PC for hours, I wouldn't find it. Then I try as much as possible to go away from the PC. Let's say if I'm at my workplace, I'll just call a different colleague of mine to just go through the course to see if there is something that I'm missing. At times there are just minor things that I've missed in there. But because I've sat behind the course all day, I don't even pay attention to those things. But because that's the first time the person looked at the code, the person will say, oh, but you omitted this syntax. And the moment at that point, I will learn something there. Next time, I should pay more attention to that thing. So when you get an error, try as much as possible to try all possible means to solve it. If you are unable to solve it, then seek for help. My supervisor at the office will say, shout louder so that someone can hear you and rescue you. Okay, let's go to our last slide. That's the style. So with the style, when we did the QGIS, so the QGIS, we apply some symbologies in there. If you all remember, you apply some stars, try to categorize the data, and compose some nice maps from the data sets. So with this data, so when we start the map in QGIS, we can save that style and apply the same style to that same vector data when we publish it on Geoserver. So that one too we'll go through. So like these are some summaries I just gathered from what the practicals will be having. So at this point, I will quickly minimize this and go to our Geoserver, then we will start our practical section. I think it's 8:13 today. We started late, so forgive me. When it's 8:30 or 8:45, we can call it a day. Then maybe continue on Monday. Tomorrow, Saturday, we will open the floor. Any question you have related to what we've taught from Monday to today, you can just, if you have any question, you can come to that section. We'll have an interactive session and help you out solve the errors that you are having. Okay, so this is our Geoserver interface. And at this point, I'm expecting each and every one of you to log in on your Geoserver. We are using, I know most of you kept the default username and password, admin and Geoserver as the password. Yeah, so log in. Then when you log in, defaultly, Geoserver loads some data. It has some pre-installed layers in there, which you can look at. Yeah. So it has some pre-installed layers in there. These layers, you can visualize the layers in there. I usually, when I'm starting a real project and I set up a Geoserver, I just delete everything to have a clean sheet. But you can keep it there to help you appreciate how Geoserver serves the data out. Okay, so we are going to touch base on these things. So, I mentioned earlier, each time you start your work, you create a workspace. Defaultly, Geoserver has a workspace. They created some workspaces. Let me just go in there. So you can all see sites. We have sites, we have IT Geo Solutions, we have Nook, we have SDE, we have SF, we have Tiger, we have Top. Okay, so for the purpose of illustration, I want all of us to create a workspace called Geospatial. Okay, the URI, I'll just leave it. Then let's save it. Sorry. Okay, so let's replicate Geoserver in the namespace here and save it. Okay, so we can see our Geoserver, our Geospatial site here. So it's like we've created a bigger container or a bigger workspace that we are come to work in. So all our data sets for that project, let's assign it to the workspace. Everything that we are doing related to the project. So let's say the project name is Geospatial. So everything that we do in the Geoserver, we are going to assign it to that workspace so that we organize our data sets. So we have another project, you can create a workspace, then you organize the data in there. Okay, so now that we have our workspace created, we will move to the stores. So let's come to the stores by clicking on the store menu, and you will see a table with an add a new store, remove a selected store button up there. And we have a search box here. Assuming you have thousands of layers, thousands of stores connected here, you can search for, depending on the name you gave it, you can search for that store. Okay, so let's create a new store. Let's click on add a new store. And at this point, we are going to connect to our Postgres database. So the database we created 2 days ago, let's connect to that database. And over here, so let's use the Postgres database. Okay, let me go back. Let me touch base on this too before. So you can see we have directory to spatial files. So if you have a shape file on your machine, you can use this to connect to it. We have XRE shape file. You can also connect to it. You have I've not used the Postgres GENDI before, So I'm sure it's related to Postgres, but what I've used is Postgres. And or you can also, if you have a Geo package on your machine, you can also publish that here. But for the sake of this session, let's connect to our Postgres database. So I'll click on Postgres. Then on the form here, we can see the workspace. Automatically, it selects the default, that's site. So let's click on it and select our workspace. That's Geospatial. That's our workspace. So the data source, we have to give it a name to identify the data source. So I will give, you can give it any name. So I'm going to give mine a WebGIS underscore DB. So that anytime I come, I know that, okay, this is the source to my WebGIS database. My database is called WebGIS. So I'm just giving it this name so that anytime I come in there, I'll be able to identify it easily. You can also give it a description. So if you want to give it a description, you can just give it. And let's notice something. When you check on the form, some of the inputs have some asterisk after the labels. All the inputs that has asterisk are required. All the inputs that has asterisk are required. So it means that you shouldn't skip those inputs. So let's fill it. Over here, I wouldn't speak much about it because we filled forms of this nature before. But for the sake of our new members, I'll just touch base on it quickly. So the local host, we are using localhost because it's the database that we are trying to connect is sitting on our machine. If you are connecting to an online database, you input the server IP in there to connect. Okay, so that's for the local host. The port, the database we are running is running on port 5432. That's the default port assigned to that database. Then the database, we have to input the name. I think mine is WebGIS. Let me get the right spelling. Okay, what did I use? Okay, WebGIS. So please confirm these things before you submit the form, or else you get some errors and you have to come back. And the schema is public. Yeah, that's my default database schema. Then the user is Postgres. That's my default user I'm using. And I'm sure most of you are also using the same user. Then over here, you type in the password to that database. So, this form is similar to the form we filled when we were trying to connect our QGIS to our database. Yeah, so if we're able to do that, this shouldn't be an issue at all. Okay, so our namespace is already there, the Spatial. There's no need to tamper with it. Then with the rest of the form, I will keep it as default. So just get the data, like the parameters for all these up onto here. Then with the rest of the form, these are not required. We'll just keep it at default and we'll just save the store. Okay, so our store is saved. Let me close this. No thanks. So now this is our store. So after you've created a store, it opens this interface for you to preview the data or like the tables in the Postgres database we've connected. You can see that. So you can see we have health facilities, you have airports, POIS, we have the POIS coordinates, we have railway line, we have regions, we have rivers. Okay, so these are the data sets we have in the database. So At this point, okay, let's click on the stores. Let's click on the stores. So when you click on the store, click on the store. When you click on the store, you see the store name here. Can you see that? So that's the workspace. Our workspace is Geospatial, and the store name I created, or the store I created, is called WebGIS DB, and the type is a PostGIS. Please hope you can all see that. Okay, so I'll pause for 20 seconds for those of us who are now trying to connect to the database and get to this point to quickly catch up with the class. If you have any question, you can get that on the platform, and I will read that after my presentation. Okay, so someone was asking, how can we import raster file into the PostGIS? Yesterday I made mention you can do that, but I won't teach that. I wouldn't advise you to import the raster file into your database. It is going to slow down your database because of the sizes of your raster files. So I'm going to teach you a more productive way of going around this. All right. Okay. I hope we are all on the same wavelength now. So let's continue. Okay, so now that we've created this connection to our stores, we will now publish our first layer in Geoserver. Okay, so let's go to layers. So when you go to layers, then we will click on add a new layer. Okay, so it says add a layer from. So it's trying to tell you where do you want to add the layer. So it will list all the data stores that you have on your system or on your Geoserver. So all the layer the data stores that you've created, it will be listed here. So I'll select our WebGIS, which is under Geospatial workspace. So that's what you are dealing with. Okay. So at this point, I would like each and every one to publish just the region. So click on publish, then it will open this page for us to complete the form. So we are not going to fill everything here. We'll just fill what you are supposed to fill here, the most important ones. Then we will just leave the rest as default. So what's the name of layer? So automatically it brings the name of the table, that's region. If you want to change it, you can change it. I want to make the R capital. Okay, so we skip this and the title to make it capital R, region. Okay, then over here, abstract, if you want to type in something, if you want to give it a keyword. So usually it has this keyword with the name of the table name in there, but you just have to skip that. So you are skipping all these. So this place, the coordinate reference system, and the bounding box. So automatically is going to select the spatial reference of your data. If you remember, when we were importing the data using the PostGIS bundle, we stated the SRID code, the spatial reference there. So the data in the database has a spatial reference. So when you're publishing the data, it automatically picks it up here. In situations where your data that you imported has no spatial reference, you can also give it a spatial reference here. So over here, you can see native SRC already has been selected, and the declared SRC has also been selected. So you just have to click, you come to the bounding box. Tomorrow I'll talk about this first declared, but for the purpose of this presentation, we'll skip it today. I'll come to for tomorrow when we are publishing the other layers. I'll talk about the SRS handling. So we'll say create the compute the bounding box. So when you click on it, it's creating a bounding box for your data. So it is going to take the top right coordinates and takes the bottom left, sorry, the top left coordinates and the bottom right coordinates of your data sets. Yeah, so that you have the system can know how the extent of your data, the data that you've imported. Okay, then we'll move to this place. Say compute from native boundary, native bounds. So when you click on it, and one thing you should also notice, pay attention here, when you compute from data and you compute from native bounds, kindly check the coordinates here. They should fall within like a certain range. Like it should be the same. At times, I've worked with the data where after computing it, I got a different value from here, and I had to check why that why I was getting that, and I think it was related to the spatial reference. So I had to correct that and come back, and I got the right value. So with the data sets we have here, we don't have any issue with that. So just click on compute from data and click on compute from native bounds. Then we are good to go here. Then over here, when we come to the properties, so the properties are the columns in the tables. So you know what's the table that we've published here is the region table. That's our region shapefile we imported. And when you go to the attributes, we have a geom column, a column called geom, we have a column called region, and we have a column called reg code. That's the regional code, right? So these are the properties here, and you can customize these attributes. You can choose to show some and leave the others, but for the purpose of this illustration, we'll just keep it at default. So let's uncheck the customize. Okay, so now that we are done with our data, let's come to publishing. Okay, so when we come to publishing, we won't do anything here, but we come to WMS settings. So when we come to WMS settings, over here we have to apply a style, but I will just leave it as default because we want to just publish the main task here is to just publish the layer. We will now come back and apply the style after we've learned how to create the style. Okay, so over here I'm just showing you the form where we are going to the forms that we are going to complete. We are just going to tackle with the WMS settings, just that. All right, so let's click on save and save the layer. If you get any error, kindly check where the error is coming from and solve it. Okay, I have some number of layers here. So where is my region? Let me see. Let me search for it here. Sorry. Okay, so you can see I gave an example earlier. So let's see something here. You can see I have two regions and two regions here. I have region, and the region, I can identify these two regions by the workspaces. So you can see the first region that I had on my PC before the one we just created, it belongs to a workspace called sites. And the one that I just created belongs to a workspace called Geospatial. So we have the two regions in our layers, but they belong to different workspaces. So you see the importance of the workspaces that the workspace I made mention earlier. So the same data sets, but they belong to different projects or they belong to different workspace. Okay, so now that we've saved our layer, we want to preview our layer. But before we do that, we'll do something. Let's just wait for another 20 seconds for our colleagues who are trying to get to this stage before we proceed. We are about wrapping up for today. Sorry, I apologize for starting late. It was out of control. I couldn't help it, but I promise it wouldn't happen again. Okay, so let's continue. So let's go to our layer preview. You click on a layer preview, and over here you will see all the layers that you've created on your Geoserver. So over here, I'm sure you're also having a lot of layers here. So I'll search for my region. Oh, sorry, the spelling is wrong. Okay, so when I search for the region, I'm getting the two regions that I have in there. So I want to just visualize what I've just published, the region that belongs to the Geospatial workspace. I'll click on it. I'll click on open layers. So when I click on open layers, you can see the region here. So this is the data that we've published, and it loads faster than the GeoJSON. So what you are seeing here, the Geoserver has converted the data into a PNG, like an image. And let's see something. When I click on any of these features, I should get the attributes. So you can see when I click on central region, so that's central region, the red code is CR. When I click on western region, it gets the attributes. When I click on western north, I get a region. I click on that, you can also get that attribute. So you can see we've been able to publish our layer in here, and there is a filter that you can apply. Okay, so let me just pause here for those of us who are trying to get to this point to get here. We are about wrapping up for today's section. All right. So let's continue. You can see three dots here, right? When you click on the three dots icon, you will see in SQL also we have I said SQL. Then Geoserver, they have a way to filter out their data sets, right? So over here you can also they call it CQL. You can also filter the data sets here. So assuming you want to filter out a certain data set, you type in the SQL command here and you apply it. But I don't want to jump the gun for today. I'll pause my presentation here and open the floor for about 3 or 4 questions. Then we'll end today's session. Then God willing, Monday we will dive into the other aspects of Geoserver, publish the other layers, get our Geotips on the Geoserver, then we'll move to the web development. Yeah. So if you have any question at this point, I'll pause and welcome the questions. So you can put it on the Telegram page and I'll tackle them one after the other. All right. Thank you very much. Okay, so the second question is, how did you create the layer out of the SQL query on the POIs table in the PGIV? Okay, so before we created the layer, we first of all came to stores, right? We came to stores, then we added the store here by clicking on add a store. Then we came to PostGIS, right? Then we selected our workspace that we created earlier, that's Geospatial. Then we entered the values in here. Then when you get to connection parameters, you provide the connection to the database that you created in the PostGIS database. So when you give all the parameters here, then you can save that and get your connection set up. So when you get to layers, you will see your store that you saved, and you can access all the tables in that database, and it should be good to publish any of the layers that you want to publish. What's the password and username? So the next question is, what's the password and username to the Geoserver? The password, the username is admin, small letters, and the Geoserver is Geoserver, small letters. These are the defaults. But when you are installing and you change the default, then that one I wouldn't be able to help you. You have to remember, try and remember what you input during the installation. Okay, I'll welcome just 2 questions, then we'll wrap up the session. Then we can continue, God willing, Monday. But tomorrow at 12 p.m. GMT, we'll open the session. We'll have the other my other colleagues, that's Jed, Eugene, will be online, and any questions that you have related to what you've taught from Monday to Friday, you can bring it out, and we'll be very glad to help you solve the obstacle or the issue that you are encountering. Okay, so the next question I'm seeing on the platform says, we'll be able to add the names and we'll be able to add the names of the regions. Will we be able to add the names of the regions? Now, please, can you come clear that where are we adding the names of the regions? Are you talking about the Geoserver or the PostGIS database? If you can come much more clear. Okay, the Geoserver. Yeah, so yeah, you can add the names of the regions. So that's one aspect that we would tackle, God willing, Monday. So we start from there. We try and add the style. Do you think we should tackle that one today? I'm thinking it's getting late, but I don't mind tackling that. Okay, just to wrap it up, let's add a star to the layer that we added, then we can call it a day. Okay. All right. So let's go to style. When you click on styles, you can easily add a style by clicking on add a new style. Okay, so over here, you are expected to type in an SML language to style your layer. Yeah, one of the days I used to cram all these codes, then I'll just put them down. At times I'll go online and go and get some people's code and edit it. But QGIS has a nice way of doing that. So I'll go to QGIS, then try and load. By now we should all be able to load our data from our database onto QGIS. So I'll try and load the region, right? So I'll connect to the server, and I'll add the region to the map. Let me close it. So we have our region here, right? And let's say I would like to style the region so I'll go to the properties of the region, come to symbology. I would like to make it a bit, let's say, hollow, transparent. Okay, simple fill. I would like to make it transparent. Then I'll give it a red color for the borders. Let me increase the stroke rate. Okay, let me apply it and see how it's going to look like. Okay, I think this is okay. Then I'll add a label. So I think this is the question the person was asking, sorry. So I'll add a single label. Then I'll say, yeah, add the label. Okay. So over here, you can play along with the text formatting to make sure that they are all falling at the right place. But I'm just trying to show you how to get the styles to the QGIS. Yeah, so you can play along with the style formatting to get the data in the middle. Let me just wrap the character. Let me see, 7. After every 7 characters, you should just wrap it. Or let me make it 5. Okay, so we are assuming we've styled our layer, right? So this is our layer here that you styled. There are other things, anything that you want to visualize on the map, you can do everything here, and after you get to the Geoserver. So over here, I will double click or go to the right click on the layer, right? Then come to styles. Can you see that? Okay. So I think let me just open the properties. Okay, so just come to the properties, right? Right click on it, come to properties. You will see the star, like a drop down here with a star. Click on it, then you will see save style, right? So when you click on save style, in Geoserver, usually the style should be in a format called XLD. Yeah, so you come to save style as an XLD style file, right? Then I will navigate to a folder on my PC and I'll save it. I usually save it. Okay, I have a folder on my PC called XLD. So I'll save it region. I have other regions in this. I'll say Geospatial _region. So that's the name of the file that I'm saving. It's on my desktop and then XLD folder. So I'll go there. Okay. So after you've saved that, you click on OK, and it's going to save that file in there. So let me go to my desktop and fetch that file. So there's a folder called XLD. Okay, so that's my folder. And in there, I have this file here. Let me see. Okay, so you can So that's the file we just loaded. So now that we've saved our file, we will go to our Geoserver, right? So let me go back to our Geoserver. So over here, we want to give like upload that file that we saved in our QGIS. So you just have to come in here, choose file, right? Then navigate to where you saved the file. So I'll go to my desktop and search for my SLD folder, and I'll select my Geospatial region. Then click on open. Then after that, you click on upload. So Geoserver will load the star. So this was what I was talking about. Yeah, so we're supposed to write all these codes in here. Then install it manually here. But QGIS usually helps us to do that. I don't know of ArcGIS, if ArcGIS is able to export the style out of it. But anybody who is an expert in ArcGIS can tell us. I don't know if there's that functionality. Okay, so when you load the style here, in order to confirm whether like the style is what you are expecting, just click on Preview Legend to see whether the style will load. It's supposed to preview, like get you a thumbnail of how it's supposed to look. Okay, so you can see it's here. It's a red boundary in here. And anytime you load your SLD, try and validate and see if it's okay. If there are no errors, you are good to go. But if there are errors, you have to check it before you publish it. Okay, so over here, we are giving it geospatial_region. That's the name of our style, right? And we'll save it to our geospatial workspace. So you can see that when we went to layers, we assigned the layers to the workspace, geospatial. So all the works that we are doing, we are trying to save it in that container or that workspace. So when you are done with this, you are good to save. So you can save it now. Then you have your style here. So we are going to go back to our layers and apply this style to our layer, right? That's the last activity we are doing. Then we'll end this session. So I'll go to layers, right? And let me scroll down. Let's search for our region. Okay, so that's the region we are. Okay, so when it loads, I'll go straight to publishing, right? So I'm going to apply the style to that layer. So when you go to publishing, scroll down to this side, WMS setting, and you see default style. It has given it that default style you saw, that gray with the black stroke. So over here, just scroll down and you see the style that you saved. So you can see the workspace Geospatial, and the name of my style is Geospatial region. So I'll add that so you can see that there. Okay, so when I'm done with it, I'll just have to save it. I've applied the style to the layer, so I'll just save it. So when it's done saving, just come to where you previewed it, right? Then just refresh it. So you see that the style is going to be applied to that layer. So whatever we did in QGIS has been transferred to the Geoserver. So all the styles, so assuming we placed the text in there, maybe when you zoom in, then the text appears at a certain zoom level, the text should disappear. You can do all those styles in QGIS, export the SLD, upload it on Geoserver, and apply it to the layer. Okay, so what you should avoid is to, let's say I have a region boundary, right? a region boundary from a different source. I use that. So let's say because we loaded this region boundary and I've saved the style in the system. Next time when I get a region boundary from a different source and I publish it, because they are all regions, I'm going to apply the same style to it. It's not going to work. If they don't have the same attributes in there, you'll get an error. So in order to avoid all those back and forth, just the layer that you are going to publish in Geoserver, load that same layer in QGIS, style it, save the style, and apply the style on Geoserver, and you wouldn't have any issues with errors and all that. So thank you very much for today, for having patience to wait for me whilst I was locked up in another meeting. And we will also use this this platform to thank all those who donated to our Buy Me a Coffee page. Where I saw that some people generously donated some money to support this cause. So I would use this opportunity to thank you. God richly bless you and replenish wherever you got that money from. Yeah, the team is very grateful. All right. Thank you. And if you have any other questions, you can put them on the platform right after this session. My colleagues are there. Our colleagues who are also experts in this will be on the platform. We will all try and help one another so that the next time we come online, we will all get to the same wavelength and we will just move on with our section, the next session.